Hello and welcome back to another video. Today's video we are going to be doing an in-depth analysis for the poem called Alexandra. It's a South African poem, so let's get into it. So, when I teach poetry, the first thing that we need to look at is our external analysis, which I split into two subheadings. Title, we look for the denotation and the connotation, and structure, we look for lines, stanzas, and rhyme scheme. So for this poem, the denotation of Alexandra would be a proper noun because we don't know if it is the name of a place or a person. And then the connotation that we have with this particular name is the township name Alexandra in South Africa in Joburg. And the connotation that we associate with that is the poverty and violence that goes along with it. The structure of this poem is 41 lines, 5 stanzas, and no rhyme scheme. Usually, if there's no rhyme scheme, it means that it's written in free verse, which allows the poet to express a lot of their natural speaking ability, to tell the story, to be able to share their emotions, and get their meaning across in a much more fluent manner. So we are going to go look at our internal analysis, and if I was teaching this in class, I would get somebody to read the poem out completely, but for time's sake, we're not going to do that. I'm just going to do line by line as we go along. Please take note that there's going to be a lot of verbal notes that I'm going to give that will not be present on the PowerPoint. So please do feel free to pause, slow it down, or go back and re-listen to get all the notes that I'm saying verbally. Please also remember that everything that I say is not cast in stone. Because poetry is subjective, there are many interpretations and many notes that you can add or take away from poetry. So this will just be a guideline, some in-depth analysis, and you're more than welcome to share with who you think needs to have this information. So the first thing that I want you to highlight is the word mother and Alexandra, as well as you, because throughout the poem he's going to use the poetic device apostrophe to address this person that is not there and speak to them directly. But when we do that, he is also using that of a metaphor, comparing the township to that of a actual mother, as well as giving personification, those human qualities to that township. So it interchanges between your metaphor and personification. He starts off and he says, were it possible to say mother, I have seen more beautiful mothers, which means I is first person. This makes it relatable to the reader, that it's not something that he is making up. It is something that he is actually going through his emotions. The fact that he says more beautiful mothers means that this mother that he is talking to is not as beautiful as others. And we're not talking about a literal beauty. We are talking about that of a mothering nature, to be kind, to be protective, to nurture. Those are types of mother characteristics. And he is trying to say that this mother that he's talking about, he has seen more beautiful. And if we talk about the grander scheme of things and that personification of the township, Alexandra, he's saying that there are other places in this world that have more care for their people than this place. A most loving mother, and tell her, there I will go. And usually in nature, the typical way of doing things is that a mother will raise their children and set them out into the world for them to succeed and do what they need to do, but not for this one. He says Alexandra, now it's almost as if he becomes more formal. Instead of mother showing that relationship, he says Alexandra, I would have long gone from you. So here he makes use of assonance with the O. It basically shows that length, that if he was going to leave, it would create that distance. He also makes use of consonants with the L's in tell and the will. So he basically just creates this soothing sound of the mom and the relationship, as well as showing how a mother would raise a child in order for them to leave. He continues and he says, but we. So the pronoun change here is very significant because in stanza 1 he says, I have seen, I will go, I would have, and now it says we. And in that it makes it more of a unity symbol, that it is not just one person that's experienced this, it's multiple. And when it says but, it means that the typical mother raising you to go out into the world, it now contradicts, and it says, but we have only one mother, none can replace. So there is, in a sense, the connection between the place and the person, the speaker. And so it shows how even if they wanted to leave, they didn't because of that attachment. So it shows that it's not possible. Just as we have no choice to be born, which makes it really sad because he's saying here that the connection that they have to this place, Alexandra, means that they didn't choose to be born into this society. They won't choose to be born into these circumstances. It just happened. But the fault here is not their own, yet they are being punished for it. We can't choose mothers. We fall out of them like we fall out of life to death. Here it becomes a very dark imagery, very harsh, because to say fall out rather than the words we are birthed, it gives that relationship. So fall out is almost as if it was careless. Nobody cared about you when you were born into this world. And just how we are born falling out of them, which is a harsh imagery, it shows how we will fall out of life to death. So as people get born, I'm not cared for, but at the same time, nobody's going to care if I die either. So it makes it really sad. And the fact that it says fall, you can also assume that their birth was accidental and beyond their control, as well as their death is accidental or beyond their control. And in this particular part, it makes it really sad how it's not just one person that feels this way. It shows how many people are born into this world that feel no sense of belonging. Now he starts this next line with the word and so this conjunction shows a continuation of what he was saying in the previous stanza. And he starts off and he says, and Alexandra, so he wants to add to the list, my beginning. So now he reverts back to that first person perspective. So he went from first person to your inclusive nature of the we back to mine. And it says, my beginning was knotted to you. Now, the metaphor and the comparison of that knotted is almost as if he's comparing that to an umbilical cord that is connected to a mother and a child. That means that my beginning, when I was birthed, it was literally not my destiny, just like you not my destiny. And the play on word of the knot and the knotted shows how when you are connected to that place, like Alexandra, it will never ever be taken away from you. But the fact that it says my destiny is almost as if we assume that where you are birthed, that means that that will be your future. So you are born into those circumstances, which means that that would be your worth, which is so sad to think of. It also says that just like you, not my destiny. So he blames the Alexandra, he blames the mother for his circumstances. And it's not his fault, it's the mom's fault. Because you birthed me, because you gave life to me, you determined where I'm going to go in life. That is where the not my destiny comes in. He continues and he says, you throb in my inside silences. Now, to say inside silences, it means that inner voice, that to have either inner conflict, inner peace, identity crisis. And he's saying to throb, so that almost gives that heartbeat, that where it would be in unity in the womb through the umbilical cord. It would give that unity, and which means that this place is also my identity, that with this place, this is what gives me my heartbeat, to throb, beat strong. And it usually describes that of pain, like this throbbing sensation. So the association that this person has with Alexandra is very negative. And so if we ask about the attitude of the poet, we would say that he has a very negative attitude towards Alexandra because of words like this. And inner silences show us he deliberates. If these voices in my head tell me that I will not be worth anything, you are silent in my heartbeat that's loud to me. So this line is a paradox, and let me explain the paradox. Because of the word silent and loud, those two words that are opposite but in the same line, that is a paradox. If they were next to each other, it would be an oxymoron. So because it's in the same line and separated, that line then would be a paradox because of silent and loud. And what he's talking about here is that it's not a deliberate thing that I was born in Alexandra that I'm going to be worthless, but it's that inner voice that tells me, that's loud, that reiterates. Because the more you tell someone something, the more it will become relevant. If somebody tells you, you fat, you fat, you fat, every single day for a year, that becomes your belief, that becomes your identity. And so when somebody gets told you are from Alexandra and you are worth nothing, that's almost as if that identity then gets attached to you. And so when he says you are silent in my heartbeats, he wants to show here that I am reminded every single day that I am not worth it. Alexander, often I've cried. This shows the emotion, crying not out of happiness, but almost as if he is heartbroken. When I was thirsty, my tongue tasted dust. It means that when I needed sustenance, you were not there. And the reasoning he gives is dust burdening your nipples. Now, here's a very sad thing, because if we talk about his tongue tasted dust, it's that alliteration of like the wanting to drink something, like you are thirsty. And the mother, dust burdening your nipples, the mother, the personification of that, the town Alexandra has nothing for me. And that means they were referring to that of unemployment, no housing, no food, no water, no electricity. That's what they're referring to there figuratively. But literally, they're also talking about how the actual mother, if they had this child, she would be malnourished and she wouldn't be able to feed her child due to the circumstances as well. So it's almost in this particular line that you see a different perspective of a mother herself that is suffering because of the circumstances. He then continues and he says, I cry, Alexander, when I am thirsty. And again, when I cry out, I need help, and there is nothing. Whether it is the food, for literally the food, or figuratively the jobs and things like that. Your breasts ooze the dirty waters of your dongas. Now, if we look at this line, that negative connotation of the word ooze is like an infected wound that you haven't taken care of it. It's like you've ignored it, which means that at the center, at the core of where you're supposed to provide for your people, you cannot. You are filthy, you are dirty. And so we assume, it's not proven, we assume that when he talks about oozing, we are talking about the corruption, we're talking about the poverty, we're talking about those things that cause the badness, the criminal activity that could cause a town or a place or society to be negative. The dirty waters, that is figuratively where we're supposed to get our nourishment. The dongas is supposed to be a ravine of water. And so when we look at that figurative, that imagery that gets created, is the one thing that is supposed to give us sustenance of water, it is infected. And that is the cause of how our society then goes to waste. He uses the harsh alliteration of the D in dirty and D in dongas to really emphasize the agitation and the frustration of how wasted away these people are. Waters diluted with the blood of my brothers. Now, if we talk about blood of my brothers, we're not just talking about the physical blood of how we share these things, but the actual blood shed of people in war and violence. Now, if we talk about the context of the fact that this poem was written in the apartheid times, we're talking about the fact how people fought for a better future but it just didn't. It's almost as if they died with no solution, no purpose. And so it says diluted, which means weakened. And so what should have been a positive reaction was not. And so the suffering seems to have been for nothing. Your children. Now, if we look at the words your children, there should be a relationship that is established here, but it isn't, because it says who once chose dongas for deathbed. So it was their choice to fight. It was their choice that even though they were fighting, their deathbeds was not a funeral with a respectful end. It was literally just dying in the streets, and they were left there, in the water, in the ravine. So there was no respect for their death. And so all of that political unrest comes through this line. The rhetorical question, line 22, it says, do you love me, Alexandra, or what are you doing to me? So if we're talking about this rhetorical question, usually a rhetorical question is there to engage with the reader. But in this sense, it almost creates this tone of questioning. Like, do you love me? Because if you love me, would you do this to me? Why would you treat me this way when I've done nothing to you, yet I am treated the way that I am treated? And so the questioning intention here is, why am I getting treated like this when I really didn't do anything? And it shows that relationship. Now it's almost as if he goes into this accusing, you frighten me, mama, you wear expressions, you frighten. And so the repetition of the line 23 and 25 of you frighten me, mama, that is called the poetic form of anaphora, when we have repetition of phrases. And the word where he's now gone from mother to Alexandra and you, now to the word mama, it shows that bond, because if you have that close relationship with someone, that is the nickname that you would have. My mommy, mama, nana, granny, all of those things, that shows a close relationship. But the contradiction here is that a person that has such a close bond or relationship shouldn't be frightened of that person. And so here it shows how he has a bit of a love-hate relationship with Alexander, because even though it's his root and where he comes from and his identity, he also doesn't want to be there, because he says, you wear expressions like you would be nasty to me, almost in a spiteful manner, that you would do something on purpose. Now, I don't know if he means the person that would be nasty, or the area that is a scary or bad place, but it's almost as if the intention there is not to provide, it's there to scare and take away. Line 26, he says, when I lie on your breast to rest. Now, a breast for a child is supposed to be that of comfort. It's supposed to be calming. So that's why when you're born, a mother will be given the baby to do skin to skin contact on the chest, where you are closest to the heartbeat. And so when he says, when I lie on your breast, he is seeking that comfort from Alexandra, seeking that acknowledgement of, I'm okay, I will be okay. But he says, something tells me you are bloody cruel. And so here is where it really becomes serious. And the word bloody is ambivalent. So if you wanted to say pun, a pun is created to be funny, but this is not funny. So the play on word, the poetic device then would be ambivalence, because it's the intentional double meaning of the word, but it's not intended to be humor. It's really so sad, because bloody is then literally the blood shed of people, but also the term bloody to show extent of the cruelty. So he almost has this negative, condescending tone towards the mother, and like, you bloody cruel, and he addresses her, and he's so mad that this is who you are, a mother that is so vindictive and cruel, yet he can't help but come back. And he says, Alexandra, hell. And the emphasis there on that word at the end of that line is almost as if Alexandra is hell. And he wants to show the extent of comparing Alexandra to the word hell, but also swearing, his frustration, getting that annoyance out. And he says, what have you done to me? And the repetition of that rhetorical question in a different form of, what are you doing to me? It seems as if the speaker cannot get away from this person no matter how much he tries. I've seen people, but I feel like I'm not one. And here it shows that he has a sense of a loss of humanity. Like he doesn't have any compassion for the people around him. He doesn't care. He doesn't feel. He cannot identify with those people around him. But yet he's supposed to be considered a human, yet he doesn't feel like one. And to be in that place of feeling so separated from people around you that you almost feel the sense of hopelessness. Like, what else am I supposed to do? But if we ask ourselves the question, what have you done to me? What are you doing to me? It's almost as if he uses this victim mind state of, I should be able to get away, but you are the reason. Because I'm from Alexandra, I can't do anything. And so here we question ourselves whether this is applicable or not. Does he have the attitude of self-pity, or is he being realistic that this is what society sees, that if they see that you are from this place, that you are worth nothing? So that's a good question to ask yourself, in a realistic format. He now says to us, I feel I have sunk to such meekness. And so the word sunk is literally almost as if you're drowning, you're going underwater, but it's not by choice. And so to sink, it's like that loss of control, like you cannot get out, you are drowning. I feel I've sunk to such meekness, like I've just submitted. I have this contentness of, well, it is what it is, I'm not going to fight it anymore. I'm not going to try and do anything. And so here the tone of depression really does sink in. He feels deflated. He feels like I can't do anything. I'm not worth anything. And when he says, I lie flat while others walk on me to far places, he has given up. The fact that he says, while others walk, he says that other people have achieved greater things. So it shows that there is a possibility of achieving, but he hasn't. He just lies there in contentness that, well, I'm just going to be here. And to lie flat means that you surrender. The words lie flat and meekness will then correlate with one another to emphasize that he has given up on life. He's given up on trying to be better. The line 34 to line 37, you join it together, and he says, I have gone from you many times. And the many times shows the extent of how many times he's tried to do it. It's not just once or twice. It's a continuous thing that he's tried to do. But then line 35, where it says, I come back, shows how he can't do anything else. And this almost reveals the Stockholm syndrome, that when you get abused, it's almost as if you feel like you deserve it. You keep returning back to the abuser. And this is what he does. And it shows in line 36, Alexandra, I love you. And even though he's been so mad at Alexandra, this mother figure, he still says, I love you, because I still appreciate that I come from this. And it doesn't seem logical that if any other person was looking at the situation, they would say, well, this is bad for you, leave. But it's almost as if he can't, like he struggles to leave this place, like he doesn't know. And he says, I know, which is then obviously his self-acceptance. I know that when all these worlds became funny to me, it means I've traveled, I tried to do these things, I didn't fit in, I didn't feel welcome, I didn't feel accepted. And so what I did was I silently waded back to you in shame, defeat. He has no pride. So he's almost like this broken of a person, which then links to the last two lines. And it says, and the last two lines has your message of the poem. And amid the rubble, which is what he identifies with. So he tried these things, but it didn't work, because literally he's now lying amid the rubble of the buildings, the broken glass and stones and bricks and concrete, but figuratively, he lies amongst the discarded people who have no value. And that is where he identifies himself. He says, I lay amid all of this stuff. And then the last line says, simple and black. And he says, this is the answer to the rhetorical question of what have you done to me? He says, I am simple and black, which means that my identity is that I am nothing but a black person. My identity is in my race and what I was born into and the limitations that come with that. And so the last two lines really do solidify the meaning that out of all of these things, that where you are born, who you are born to, how you are born within your origin, your race, your gender, really does depict the stereotypical way that people would treat you going into life. So if we're looking at the poem overall, the tone of the poem would be that of fearful of the actual place and feeling that sense of defeatedness. You can also include that of your depression, feeling a sense of worthlessness. The theme would be that intermingled love and pain. So it's that, inner conflict, the apartheid and the oppression that comes through. And lastly, if you were looking at pairing this poem with anything else, you could also look at his other poem, City Johannesburg, which also personifies a town, and then the child who was shot dead by soldiers in Nyanga. So if you're looking at something for intertextual to practice for your exams, you're welcome to look at some of those. But I really hope that you enjoyed this and found something useful. Please do like and subscribe the channel. Until next time.